Welcome, everybody. Thank you for showing up for tonight's event. I do appreciate it, taking time out of your busy schedules. Always important to come to our virtual meetings and see everybody on the virtual. So first of all, a couple housekeeping announcements I'm required to give you. First of all, we ask that all of you put yourselves on mute as the speakers will be speaking throughout the event. If you're an attendee here, if you so choose, you can put yourself on video. We would love to see all of you and your smiling faces. Again, questions if you use the chat room, Susan and I will be monitoring the chat room for questions pertaining to the panel. I do appreciate that. Also, FEI Chicago chapter will be offering one CPE credit for this meeting. Of course, you must attend the full meeting and then request your CPE credit through Susan at FEI Chicago chapter. The office is, you can request that at the email address info@feichicago.org to get your CPE certificate. That's info@feichicago.org. Okay, after the program, you'll receive a program evaluation for tonight's session. Please give us your feedback. It's that important feedback that allows us to pivot away or pivot more deeply into topics or events such as this. We are hosted tonight by FEI Chicago chapter. I encourage you all to join if you're not a member now. I also let you know that if you have colleagues that are not members to join, we do have 6-month free memberships we are promoting right now. So feel free to invite some colleagues or yourself to join for 6 months and engage with us. You can get those again at the FEI chapter website, feichicago.org. All right, without much to do, I will introduce Ellen Steinbecker, who brings 30 years of experience to Riugli, which she founded with her partner, CJ Huell. I always get his name wrong, in 2014. As a company owner, she approaches her business with clear understanding of the operational challenges facing her and her clients. She focuses on representing tenants both locally and nationally. No more to do. I give the mic to Ellen. It's all yours, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So good to see your faces. Can't wait to see you all in person. Our program is called Back to the Office, maybe, maybe not. So we're solidly in the pandemic for the last 18 months. We gave the same panel, we're speakers about 6 months ago, and we thought it would be prudent to give an update. Obviously, we have solid vaccines now. Things are evolving and changing, or are they? So I'm going to take a minute and allow the panelists to introduce themselves. Scott Becker, can you please chime in?
Yep. Hi, my name is Scott Becker. I'm with Partners by Design. I've been here for about 18 years. We are an interior design architecture firm focused almost solely on corporate interior office space. So we should bring some good perspective on what's happening in the design world and the modifications that are happening that we're seeing in designing for office spaces going forward through this pandemic that we're in right now.
Thanks, Scott. Corey Segrist.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good to be back. Corey Segrist, coming live from JLL's global headquarters here in Chicago. Part of our integrated portfolio services team, and we specialize in working with companies anywhere from startups to public companies to help develop, implement real estate strategies. So thanks for having me back again.
Thanks, Corey. We have Ray Ali, who is bringing forth our HR perspective.
Hi, everyone. And Alan, thanks for having me back. I am the Chief People Officer at Legacy.com. We are one of the top 50 websites in the United States, and I've been with Legacy now for 3 years. I love it. I love it. So I'm excited about this panel today.
Thank you. And lastly, Bill Tarnow, our legal expert.
So I'm pleased to be back again also. Unlike the rest of my esteemed panelists, it's always a little suspect whether as the lawyer, I get invited back because people usually don't like to hear what I have to say. So I'm pleased to be rejoining. I chair our labor and employment practice group. We work with employers in Chicago and nationally, and have day in and day out for the last 18 months navigated these COVID waters. So, well, I'm sorry to have to be still talking about this with everyone. As we know, it's our operating reality, and we look forward to sharing our thoughts and answering any questions you might have. As I said, feel free to relay those as we speak.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll reiterate that. If you have a question during it, don't wait till the end, just shoot it through and we'll try to get it answered for you. I'm going to start the whole panel with going to Corey and asking him to just tell us what he's been seeing in the overall real estate market. Are people coming back? Are they coming back to the office? Percentages, offices getting leased, or is the sublet market the only way to go right now?
Thanks. So the news isn't all negative. The Delta variant did trip us up a little bit. Chicago, generally speaking, back to the office is around 32%. Similar to other large urban cities, New York struggling, San Francisco struggling. You'll see the southern states; those states never really shut down. They've, as far as back to office, the large urban centers have really been slower to recover. Some other interesting stats just over the past year, we've seen a flight to quality. So looking at 2021 leases, all new leases in Chicago that have been signed in 2021, 66% have been Class A. So the Class B assets are really taking a hit. People want to be in more efficient, healthier buildings, newer buildings. As far as tour activity, we've seen that pick up. That's picked up quite a bit. Now, that hasn't necessarily translated to actual transactions done, but that also, we're seeing some positive momentum. It's really been a tale of two submarkets where a majority of the activity has been Fulton Market, around 31%. Second would be West Loop. So another interesting point, new deals versus kicking the can down the road. Very early on in the pandemic, a lot of tenants just went ahead and did a year or month to month or a year and a half extension. We are now seeing a lot more of new deals being done versus kick the can. So if people are moving, they are picking up. And then as far as the sublease and inventory, we've seen that plateau, and that's actually been improving. We're actually seeing companies pull back subleases that they initially had on the market. So, overall, you read a lot in the news. There's some negative out there, which isn't necessarily accurate all the time. But we are bullish going into 22. It's been a lot less consulting and more transactional now. So we feel positive heading into the new year.
Well, thank you, Corey. I do appreciate that. I'm going to pivot to Bill right now because, we've the legal aspect of all of this. And I asked you the other day, are we seeing a lot of litigation that has come down of, the lawsuits for not getting vaccines or making mandates or any of that kind of stuff? Or has it been less than what you anticipated?
It has been about what we anticipated. There was an early surge when COVID first hit, and states, federal government, and municipalities were implementing a patchwork of regulations and requirements, and then employers were left to figure out what does that all mean. So we saw a number of lawsuits early on testing the water. Some early takeaways were that most courts said that if an employee is complaining about COVID exposure in the workplace or any related illness, that's going to be a workers' compensation issue and not a plaintiff's class action issue. So that shut down the spigot on a lot of the litigation itself that might have had the plaintiffs sharks in the water circling. So we haven't really seen a massive spike of employee-specific litigation. We've seen lots of litigation around whether insurance coverage is triggered by business that have to close because of state mandates or because of COVID issues, and whether that loss of revenue is an insurable event, and how does that impact a business. I'm involved in one piece of litigation presently in federal court about the, I will say, alleged breach of a lease that was supposed to start because they just couldn't put people in the space. And that's to the tune of several millions of dollars that are held in the balance because people's plans just changed. So there's been certainly some litigation as an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic. But for employers, wearing your employer hat, it's been pretty much business as usual, with a focus being, how do we return people to the office? What can we do in terms of asking for vaccination status, mandating vaccines, and that sort of thing? So that is really where we've been busiest with employers. And I will note there, for those of you on the call who are employers or are working with your company about how do we use our space, what do we do with our workforce, the president has issued a mandate to OSHA, the federal safety agency, to draft its requirements for large employers to either mandate vaccines or mandate weekly testing. And large employers expected to be 100 or more employees. Those regulations are in draft form on the president's desk. There are various governmental machinations before that can come to light. But in the very near future, we can expect a proclamation from the federal government that if you have 100 or more employees, you are going to have to mandate vaccines or require proof of vaccination on a weekly basis, proof of testing on a weekly basis from all of your employees. And that opens a whole can of worms because of state variations and how some state laws might try to opt out of this, as well as questions about who pays for testing, what if a test is done and you don't have the result back yet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole parade of horribles we could trot out in terms of what this means for your planning, but this is on the horizon and will be significant breaking news on the legal side of things when that actually hits the press. And I saw Carolyn, there was a question posted in the chat. Carolyn, the question for everyone is the testing to be paid for by the employee or the employer once OSHA issues its regulations? It is a stay tuned analysis right now. There is no directive that has been even whispered by OSHA about what that means, but there are analogies running both ways. This is out of the office requirement, or is this more like protective gear that's being required by the employer, which would have to be paid for? So it's an open question, and that in and of itself will be a significant element of litigation.
Well, Bill, I think that is a huge nightmare for the HR world. So I'll turn to Ray for a second to discuss, obviously mandating. And my understanding is you can mandate. I believe Ray's company did not. But I'd love to get Ray's perspective from an HR perspective.
Yes, absolutely. I love talking HR nightmares. I have a 30-year HR career that has been built on fun in the sun of HR and HR nightmares. So at our company at legacy.com, what we did was in April, we had announced, the CEO and myself, we had announced to our employees that everyone will continue to work remotely until the unforeseeable future. And where we did mandate proof of vaccination is if for employees chose to come into our office, our Chicago office, then we asked that they would be fully vaccinated and that they would show that proof that vaccination card, they would show that to HR, confidentially, so that I can safely say and know that any employee that's walking around the Chicago office is fully vaccinated, doesn't have to be masked up unless it's during, lunchtime when food is served. So that is the approach we took. We started that in April, early in spring. And we didn't do we'll return to the office and then kind of have to kick the can down the road. And it's like every 2 months we're pushing the date out. We minimize that anxiety for our folks by early spring, just to say, we've been working remotely for a year plus. We're going to continue doing that. And for those who can't take it at home anymore and want a place to play, come on over to the office. And we also aren't expecting that our employees are, there any particular days. I do not have shifts. I do not have, set hours, things like that. People come and go as they wish. If they only want to come in for lunch, they're welcome to do that and leave. So that's the approach we took.
Couple of quick questions were in the chat, and that was, first of all, who does monitor this? And my guess is if it's a multiple office kind of thing, there has to be either a local manager mandating and taking a look at everybody's cards, or seeing the tests, whether they come back negative or whatever, or is there a centralized HR person that has to handle all that for a litany of companies and employees?
So I'm happy to speak to what I've seen generally, but Ray, I don't know if you want to comment with any personal experiences or planning that you have before I would jump in on a more general note.
Right. I think I'll take that first piece, Ellen, and forgive me if I didn't hear your question correctly on, what HR folks or who all in HR is kind of monitoring the vaccination status. We kind of, my team and I divided and conquered. And so we had literally employees set up time with HR, and they showed us their vaccination card via Zoom. So that they knew we weren't keeping anything. And then for those who maybe sent us a photo, I would verify and then delete the photo. But I, had enough information to know that I could verify that, these people are all vaccinated. So that's the approach we took.
Okay. A quick answer to your question, Dave Tuttle. My understanding is mandates are only applicable for on-location employees, not for remote employees. If you're going to stay home, I don't think anybody can mandate you have a vaccine to stay home. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but that's my understanding.
Well, you're not wrong, but I can't say that you are right either, because it is a bit of an open question as to what OSHA will say about it. They may well say that if you're an employee of this 100-person or more employer, we don't care where you're located, because we want to prophylactically say everyone needs to be vaccinated, because there might be sporadic interaction. You're in the office once a month, or there might be a client-facing interaction, or you name it. There may be some mandate to that effect, which, again, to my point of brace for litigation all over the place, that would be one element of potential litigation. It is counterintuitive. It doesn't make a lot of sense that if someone's just sitting in a home office, they would need to be subject to that vaccination requirement, but we just don't know yet what OSHA will say. It's following up on Ray's point as well, and to the question of how do you manage this? So it really is critical that the management team coordinate with HR, and if you don't have HR, that you coordinate with your counsel or someone who can give you good guidance about how to put the policies in place, because the federal government's been very clear that you have absolutely every right as an employer to require proof of vaccination, that you can get a copy of the vaccine card, and that doing so is not wading into some sort of medical records, murky waters, that this is just a vaccine card and you're free to demand proof of it if that is your policy. So how that will happen going forward, if we're in a weekly testing cycle and getting proof of that, is a whole different can of worms. But usually you're going to run that through a single point of entry, someone in HR, so that you know the information is being handled in a really coherent and contained sort of way.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. I'm going to switch to Scott Becker, where we heard from Corey that leases are starting to happen, new activity in the market. What have you seen from office people that are what are they wanting in their office space, and what are they looking for to help them attract people to come back to the office?
Yeah, so we have, as Corey mentioned, the real estate activity is up, and we've seen project-based activity also up right now. And so the clients are struggling right now with how many people are going to come back. What are the policies going to be? Is it going to be 3 days in the office? Are we going to do desk sharing? These are lots of questions that a lot of different organizations are dealing with, especially when they're about to sign a lease for a significant period of time. And so we're running all kinds of different scenarios to say, if you bring 25% people back, it looks like this, 50% back, it looks like that, 90%, and then running all kinds of different desk sharing scenarios also. What we also are being challenged with is design space that is going to attract people to come back, because we may never have a policy that, like a client may be telling us, we may never have a policy where we're going to demand people to come back to the office, but we want the office to be really cool. And Ellen, I think you mentioned it the other day, like almost going back to that .com type of stage where we're starting to bring elements of home back into the office because people are coming from their homes, bring elements of fun and socialization, which is a little counterintuitive, but the whole complaint that we're hearing from these organizations that are deciding to come back and are deciding to sign leases is that their culture is suffering. And so they want to bring these people back so that they can kind of promote the culture and get people back in the office to socialize. And then if you need to go and do your heads down work, we'll have some spaces in the office to do that, but go home and do that. That's fine. Like it works. And so that creates an interesting dynamic, because now we have to provide spaces that have a little bit of privacy. They have their socialization area, but then they also have the technology that allows the people that are at our home to be in the office with us and kind of be contributing all at the same time. And it's translating into some kind of really fun spaces. We have a project that we're working on that is doing outdoor Zoom rooms, for example. So we can be outside, we're covered, but we're plugging the technology in that in an outdoor environment, we can still kind of create and have kind of these social the technology interactions that we're having right here. So
I'm assuming they're not in Illinois, because
not all of them are in Illinois. This one it specifically is in Texas, but yeah.
I see, there you go.
There you go.
So in addition to your own interior space, I know a lot of landlords, and Corey can echo this as well, a lot of landlords said, we have, and even Corey mentioned, a lot of clients want to look at Class A space. They don't want old buildings. So they want new buildings or newer buildings with newer modern systems. All of of course, the touchless stuff, but then also maybe newer air filtration systems, et Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons that like the Fulton Market, that whole area is super popular right now, because all of those buildings are brand new buildings. They're coming out of the ground. They've got the latest and greatest in air filtration. They were able to kind of pivot and make some upgrades and do things on the touchless side, on the monitoring of the air, on just all of that, while those buildings were coming out of the ground. And so then they're there and poised, just ready to accept these tenants. And we've also seen a number of landlords that are hiring us to do these spec suites. So I think they're banking on people are coming back, but they want them to come back in a quick manner. So they want to have the space like ready to go and just poised for somebody to come in and lease up.
So thanks, Scott. I was thinking, and I'm going to ask a general question here, just to the panelists yourself. My understanding, panelists, is that your offices are open. I believe, Scott, you have kind of a mandate of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office. Corey, your office is come in as you please.
Come in, exactly.
don't bother. You can come in if you want. We'll have space, but you don't have to. And I believe that's the same with Bill.
Yes, ours is, well, it's been a bit of a moving target. We are trending towards be in the office ideally 50% of the time and coordinate with your teams about who's in and when so we can maximize that time.
Okay. And Corey, how many, on an average, do you have 10%, 20%, 75% in the office?
In our office, we're probably between 25%, 25 and 30. It's been trending up, which is good. And then, I noticed Dave's question, Dave Burke, around the sublease market. The sublease market, we're 68% from an inventory, sublease inventory above where we were during the financial crisis, which is hard to believe. But subleases are moving, especially over the last quarter or two. And like I mentioned before, they're actually plateauing as far as new inventory as companies work through return to office and are pulling back these spaces, which is good news. And then quickly, just to touch on Scott's comment about the spec suites, that's been a trend that was going on before, that was pre-pandemic, and it's only heated up just because landlords can meet the need as it relates to tenants, requiring flexibility, shorter term. These landlords can now deliver newly built out space. Some will require as low as 2-3 years, where it used to be 5 to 7. So we're seeing flexibility in the market continue to increase.
That's another aspect, yes, that not everybody has to do a 5-year, a 7-year, a 10-year lease any longer, because the future is just a little bit more unknown, right? So we're all thinking maybe there'll be a 2019 in our future where everybody comes back to the office. My opinion is no way. I think we're going to always have this hybrid scenario. People do like the flexibility of working from home on occasion. And I think we've seen that the productivity and income levels of most companies have not waned during this time. What we have heard a lot of, and I think Ray, you might speak to it more, is the Zoom fatigue, is the fact that you don't unplug at night, right? Everybody feels like they're working 24/7 because you don't have that separation of I'm driving home now, and then you walk into this new environment, right? So how have you dealt with, or HR in general, Zoom fatigue and overall burnout?
Absolutely. We're no different than anybody else. I think where we've tried to be deliberate is to, especially at the executive team level, is to just show that it's okay to have your camera off. It's okay to literally be taking a walk while you're on a call, whether you have your camera on or off. We've had our president who's literally he lives in New York, he's in Central Park, and he might tune in for a meeting, and you can see he's just he's trying to get nature. He's outside. Our CEO will, with me and many others, say, look, I want to talk, but unless you have something to share on Zoom, I'm going to take a walk. And if you want to, throw on your gym shoes and go take a walk too, right? So we try to really push, because in the beginning, everybody was on camera. I even felt oh my God, I got to be on camera nonstop. And so the Zoom fatigue is real for sure. So we try to encourage people that way. I've seen employees who are literally on their treadmill and they've tuned into an all company stand. So I love seeing that. And the other thing we've done is we've pushed our well-being programs, so those were always important anyway, but we really had to kick that into high gear so that people were, having the permission to, enjoy it. We did a whole new thing. Last year we had an incredible program. I loved it, but we kicked it up a notch and implemented a whole new well-being platform so that people are getting points for all sorts of activity, mind, body, and spirit. And the points, after you get a certain number of points, you get gift cards and you go shopping in the e-store and all sorts of things. So, and it's just not enough. It's everything has to be on steroids. Everything has to be this permission to make sure people are taking care of themselves. And I'd say the third thing we've done is we have what's called safe space sessions. We have them every couple of weeks. The topics have ranged anywhere from, racial injustice to LGBTQ matters to women's, women's excellence to mental health. And some of the more popular sessions we tend to have are the ones where literally we have employees like open as can be, sharing true mental health issues or how they adjust and handle their anxiety, what they've learned from their therapist, to things that they can recommend for people. And we've done this because we just want people to the best of their ability, be themselves and open up. Now, having said all that, I know I still have people who are just exhausted, even though they've seen and we repeat for people to have the permission to manage their health. It's we can't be too comfortable on that one.
Thank you. I was wondering, and I'll ask actually the individual panelists this, because I think it goes across company lines, which is, and I think this was a big concern when we were jumping into the virtual world, we were jumping into staying at home, those that perhaps would get left behind, meaning new hires, right? Used to bring somebody in and train them, sit next to them, and they listened and watched and saw, right? Now they're maybe onboarding from home. So not only new employees and how do you handle them, but also what about just general promotion and visualizing excellence, right? I mean, we used to, back in the 80s, show up early and leave late, and it showed our interest and our tenacity, What do you do now in order to excel to your other virtual employees? And Scott, I know you're in a big hiring mode right now. How are you bringing on some new talent?
So I guess for the new talent, it's difficult, right? We're in the office, like you said, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we're doing in-person interviews. You do have to be vaccinated in order to even kind of apply and come in. But for us, we're very much so a collaborative group. So we're constantly like putting things out. It's really important for us to be able to read designers' body language, understand for them to kind of express what we're trying to do, because design is more of a conversation at the end of the day than it is just about going back in your hole and drawing something, right? You have to kind of all agree and bring it all together. And it's been hard to do that over Zoom. It's not impossible, but it's been harder, and it's much more successful when we can go sit in a room, all be at the same table, and truly understand what the individuals are saying and what the intent is, by reading their body language and by literally drawing on stuff on the paper. So that whole promotion thing is very real from an architectural standpoint, because we really see how people perform when they're kind of in a room with other people interacting together, right? So that's part of the reason that we've all come back, and I think we've really appreciated it, because we're very social creatures here, and we really want to understand each other, right? And so for us, it's been really important. It's been very successful to get back into the office, but like you said, I don't think we're ever going back to a full 5-day work week. There's no way we're ever taking Fridays from home away from people. It's not going to happen.
So it's interesting, out of the group here, and Partners by Design, obviously a local firm, and they mandated vaccines. So have you seen people saying once they find out your policy, did you lose people, or have you?
We did not lose a single person, and we have not, it's hard to tell whether it's affected applicants coming in, but as of so far, we have not had any issues with that. It is hard to find people right now, though. I will say we're in a hiring mode, and it's been difficult to find top talent to come in the design profession. I don't know if that's because through the pandemic, people did get laid off. I think they've eventually landed, and now we're kind of trying to recirculate that back up and hire people again. So, okay,
Corey, from bringing the young people in, have you found that how are you handling training?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, even as a team. I'm a team of 6, and to try to do work over Zoom, keep up the collaboration. It's been a challenge for the past 18 months, and as a team, we decided we need to be in the office. Not every day. Let's face it. Even before the pandemic, a typical company would have vacancy and 25 to 30% to begin with. So if we already lost those Fridays, now maybe we're losing the Mondays. But for us and the way we work, we're a lot more efficient when it's face to face.
Right.
And then I'm just a creature of habit where I have always been in the office, and I enjoy being in the office. I really don't enjoy working from home.
So Bill, maybe you can answer Kevin's question here. Recovering from COVID versus being vaccinated.
I certainly can answer it with a legal hat on. I'm not sure I can answer it vis-a-vis the medical side. And my answer is, it doesn't really matter if it counts the same or not, as to how I feel about it or how you feel about it, because OSHA is going to tell us whether they care about it or not, just as the city of Chicago has told us. And we're going to get into similar situations, Kevin, for those who have been vaccinated but not yet received a booster, right? We're going to be moving into that next wave of, well, who's really safe to return, and how we individually might view what's safe versus how someone else might. We're going to have rules of the road that are mandated. And I say we, meaning anyone who's at the 100 employee threshold or more. For those who are below it, there's going to be litigation around using that as the standard for safety, even if you don't have to comply with it. And then there could be some other litigation, just like in a negligence lawsuit, right? What is appropriate behavior and what's not? So it is a true mess from a legal standpoint. And Kevin, to your question, I can't speak to, the autoimmune response post infection and how the vaccine works. And in many respects, that is a non-issue for my work with clients, because however we might view that, the question is, are we compliant? Twofold. Are we complying with the mandates? And if not, are we knowingly deciding not to as an organization? And 2, are we implementing policies and procedures that are best for our business? We can tell you where the lines are on the field. Where do you as an organization want to be within those lines? And so that's a conversation I have daily, if not hourly, with different clients of ours, ranging from Fortune 100 to startups. And every single organization is trying to strike that right balance, which is a near impossibility given that every day seems to be a different target. We're a moving target.
So you saw the question, Bill, about workman's comp. You had indicated that it fell into workman's comp versus a class action lawsuit.
Yes.
So
I just saw that question popped up. Oh, they're moving here a little bit. Janine, it looks like, how are employees filing workers' compensation claims? So Janine, where this first really hit the news wire was in meat processing plants, for example, where they had massive outbreaks and you were having significant illness and in many cases multiple deaths that were all really attributable to contracting the virus within the meat processing plants themselves. There was little question about that. Plaintiff's lawyer swooped in, filed a class action on behalf of all employees, including the deceased employees, saying that the employer failed to implement safety standards that would have protected the workforce. And those were filed in court, federal courts, as class actions. And the company responded by saying, we want the court to dismiss these claims because they are subject to the exclusive province of workers' compensation arena, the regulatory process of state agency, which has infinitesimal exposure as compared to class actions in state court because it's all really regimented by state statute. You lose an arm, you get paid X. You lose a toe, you get paid Y, right? And so you don't get the punitive damages, you don't get all of that. And the courts have virtually uniformly agreed that those sorts of COVID-related cases do not belong in court. They belong within the workers' compensation arena. There have been some exceptions, some here out of Chicago actually, claims by McDonald's workers saying that McDonald's wasn't properly protecting them, didn't have the right policies. But what they got was an injunction requiring the employer to implement policies that were consistent with the required standards. So it wasn't really, it wasn't earth-shattering news. It was just saying, employer, go follow the regulations. So yes, there's been litigation around that, but it has largely been funneled back to the administrative agencies.
So my question is, do these employees know that at that point they can file workers' compensation claims, and are they successful in doing so?
So there have, the success rate's difficult to monitor because those are not publicly available like lawsuits are. It's within the private arena. And having said that, unless you can show that there is a direct one-to-one corollary to the office environment, it's an uphill battle for employees. By way of example, just on a personal note, a friend of a family member contacted me because they were a new sales employee hired. They were told they have to go to Florida for a training. It was very clear that they got infected from that travel. And then fast forward a week and he's on life support. And there was a whole question around, what can they be doing? Should the employer have required him to go? He had stated his objection. He didn't want to lose his job. So you're getting these heartbreaking situations, and the law is trying to sort it out. But by and large, as employers, if we're following the most recent guidance at a state, local, and federal level, we're not going to have exposure when we are telling people come back to the office with these vaccination requirements, stay remote in this safe way. We have the latitude as employers to decide what works best for us, as long as we are on that playing field of the outer boundaries of what's permissible.
Interesting. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
I saw a question from Sharada and about mandating. You know, are they seeing employees exit due to mandating of vaccines? And my experience, just through my clients, is that very, very few are actually mandating vaccines to this time. I mean, obviously, we've heard, you know, the police department, first responders, healthcare, and we're hearing the nightmare that's becoming, obviously. That's on the news every night. But my experience, and I'd encourage anyone else to chime in, is that there aren't that many mandating vaccines yet. So, and I'm not sure if that's even going to be a trend, frankly.
So I can chime in with what I'm seeing, but before I ramble on, I don't know if Corey, Scott, Ray, you want to offer up any personal experiences. I just have good view into multi-employer settings because of what we do. And so, you know, please chime in. So I will say that there are a fair number of our clients who are mandating the vaccine. When you mandate it, of course, you have to allow for the exceptions that the law contemplates if someone has a religious objection or if they have a disability. And so you set up the framework to not invite those requests, but to be prepared for them, and then to move forward. When you do so, and this is really sort of teasing out some of the comments and questions in the chat room as well, you need to be prepared for a level of attrition where people say, well, if you're going to mandate this, I'm just not returning to the office. From what we've seen with clients, the fear of that attrition and the resignation is usually greater than the reality of it when it comes to pass, that people at the end of the day, more often than not, say, fine, I'll get the vaccination. Or they, you know, present a reason why they don't think they can, and then the company has that interactive process. So I've seen employers mandate it. Most have not, and have tried to find a common ground that is workable for them and their staff to say, if you're in office, then this will happen. If you're a remote worker, this will happen. Here's how we're going to give you some optionality. But again, some of that optionality may be gone momentarily once OSHA's regulations become official.
Well, it's interesting, and Frank brought up a very big point, which is just the labor shortage out there. And frankly, I am still mystified as to how a lot of people can still not get back into the workforce. Apparently, people saved their money better than I did, but but there's a labor shortage, and especially in the industrial world. So go to mandate and you have even an exodus, you have to be prepared on the other side, right?
Yeah, Ellen, I was going to say a majority of my clients are kind of either waiting to see what everybody else is doing, waiting for see what government comes out with, but they've all mentioned mulling it over, and again, kind of what you said, Bill. They're kind of hesitant, a little bit of fear there. They're already getting pushback on just coming back to the office, then you throw in mandate. So
Jean, I see you have 2,400 employees. What's your company?
I work at Equity Residential, so we're an apartment company. So it's been very interesting in the pandemic because my employees work where people live. So my employees at the properties were never able to go home. They had to be there every day because everybody lived there. We are where people's homes are. So we definitely, somebody commented about workers' comp claims. We definitely have seen workers' comp claims because I had service employees who had to be at the property. I can maybe send home my office and my leasing employees and figure out how they could do their job remotely. And they did for the past 18, they did partly, and do virtual tours and all that kind of stuff. But my service team had to stay there and take care of the building. So we definitely did have at least some, not significant, honestly, workers' comp claims that we monitored. We as a company decided that we were going to require, the word is require, not mandate, very careful choice of words there. We are going to require all of our employees to be vaccinated by a specific date and this was just announced literally in the past couple weeks, last week to be specific. And we are, and everybody is supposed to upload their vaccine card by a specific point in time. We use a third-party vendor for a lot of our benefit administration. So it's going out to a portal and it will actually be stored on their site where the card will be. If you don't want to be vaccinated for medical or religious reasons, there's, a particular form that you're supposed to fill out, and then a committee. Somebody was asking how you're going to do that. There's a committee, it's 3 people in HR that are going to be reviewing those exemption forms and making sure that they make sense. You can't just say, I don't want it. There has to be legitimate reasons. So we're going to validate those religious and medical exemption forms to some degree. Don't know how that's going to work. It hasn't happened yet. Going into this, we knew how many employees had not yet been vaccinated because we've been asking them for 6 months to let us know if they were or not. You didn't have to show proof. You just had to say if you were, because that was helping us on the back to office concept and whether people could come into the office. So we know where we're at today leading into this process. And yeah, will there be people lost in this process? Absolutely. We do anticipate some people choosing to leave. But we also know that our peers in our business, so in multifamily, the other large multifamily competition that we have, most of them are already doing the same thing. So the other public companies such as ourselves are also mandating and also requiring it. And I mean, it's just kind of the business that we're in that we want to do it this way because we are at the property every day. And, the majority of the employees are at the property every day. So that's the approach that we're taking. We'll see where it goes.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was very interesting. I'm not sure the legal definition between require and mandate, but
as an English major, I appreciate the nuance, Jean. That's lovely. I can chime in.
Based on legal advice, let's just say based on legal advice, it's very carefully worded that it's not a mandate.
Very carefully worded. And unfortunately, that wasn't something that I was fortunate enough to suggest, although we have worked with Equity in the past. So I'm glad you guys are on the right track, and I won't get into attorney-client issues. But that's a perfect example, though, of how a business makes its decision around its operating reality, right? What Jean and her team is dealing with may be very different than XYZ Corp with the same number of employees that are just not client facing and having that sort of interaction. So there isn't one size fits all, and it is a slog, but to get your operations and HR teams together and say what works for us and here's what we're going to do is critical.
Thanks, Bill. I think I know we're getting towards the end here. I want to make sure I've got everybody's questions. If there are any, feel free to ask. I certainly want to thank the panelists for coming and thank them for their time and their expertise. Scott, Partners by Design principal, and for your architectural needs. Corey Segrist, real estate broker with JLL for all of your real estate activities. Ray Ali, her HR expertise, and certainly top-notch, what do you call yourself? Human capital, human engagement. You've got all sorts of fun names there.
Yes, all sorts of stuff.
And of course, Bill Tarnow, for all of you that want to, sue people.
Or avoid being sued. That's the other side.
There you go. There you go. Avoid being sued. That's probably the better way to look at it.
I enjoy both, but that's an option too.
Dave, are there any other housekeeping issues, or Susan?
Housekeeping, I guess I could just say thank you all for attending. Those of you that are members or want to be members, again, we have our free 6-month trial memberships. Also, feel free to go out to our website to find other events coming up here in October. And then, of course, we have our CFO of the Year Awards, November 18th. It is a streaming event, except for those that are the finalists or selected individuals due to the current situation we're in with COVID. But we'll be having other live events, hopefully in December and then into the 2022. So keep an eye out for those. Please attend if you are comfortable. We will also be having virtual events as well to try to mix it up and make sure everybody's comfortable and drives value from our membership. So thank you all. That's my, my update or my housekeeping. Thank you, panelists, for taking time out of your day. I do appreciate it the second time around. And thanks for the great insight.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. And if you want to watch this all again, it's apparently on YouTube. So you could watch this over and over, like you do with all your other shows.
Feel free to binge watch.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.